Deivi Garcia entered the 2020 season as the Yankees' number 2 or number 3 prospect, depending on which prospect rankings you read. He struggled a bit before spring training was shut down on March 12th, but after some mechanical tweaks, including moving to the other side of the rubber, he came back strong in late August when he was finally called up for his Major League cup of coffee. As a prospect, he was often compared to Pedro Martinez, obviously a Hall of Fame pitcher, so lofty expectations to live up to. But mostly he was compared because he's short of stature. He threw 97 miles an hour as a minor leaguer, we saw it in the Futures game, and he seemed to have a lot of poise. When he arrived on August 30th to the big leagues, he actually pitched pretty well from there on out. He actually got a start in the playoffs. We all know about the debacle in Game 2 of the division series. But what struck me was that his velocity was down. His fastball averaged just 92 miles an hour, though he did have a good curveball, a good changeup, and pretty good command to go with it, so he was pretty serviceable as a pitcher. Overall, he made just 6 starts in his first cup of coffee with the New York Yankees, pitching 34 1/3 innings, while going 3-2 with a 4.98 ERA and 33 strikeouts to just 6 walks. His control was really impressive. He basically had the same strikeout to walk ratio that Garrett Cole had last season, 5.5 to 1. His fielding independent pitching was 4.15, and his whip was a very promising 1.19. Again, this kid is just 21 years old, and he's going to continue to improve. He did allow 6 home runs, which is too many for 34 innings, but that should also improve as he gets to know the league and gets used to pitching in Yankee Stadium. I invited Jason Surge, a fellow YouTube content creator, onto the show to discuss Deivi Garcia, as we both saw Pedro in his prime, and we wanted to discuss whether or not the comparison between Garcia and Pedro Martinez was a fair one. What are your impressions of Deivi Garcia early on?
I like the fact that he's able to keep his control through the ups and downs, which kind of shows poise. I don't know, the jury still remains as to whether he's going to be maybe a 3 or a 4. I'd be surprised if he was higher than that, but that said, I would not be surprised if he progressed along the way. But right now, I think he's headed in the right direction. As long as they nurture him, and I think he's in good hands with Matt Blake. I agree with you there 100%. And I think they'll do the right job in nurturing him as to developing his strengths while working on the weaknesses. But I do like, and that thing stood out to me, is throughout the ups and downs, he kept his control. And that's something, it's a characteristic not a lot of pitchers have. A lot of them fizzle when that happens, and he didn't do that. It's an important component, or just an important trait, in my opinion. So I think he's headed in the right direction. And I think at the end of the day, I think he'll be a number 3 or a number 4. I just hope that it's with the Yankees.
Yeah. So I see a lot of people comparing him to Pedro. And as somebody who watched Pedro, I just don't see it. Pedro was 99-100 with pinpoint control and 3 wipeout pitches. I see Deivi Garcia as more of like a Giordano Ventura type, like a guy who could be, you know, if he tops out, like you said, a number 3, maybe a number 2, in my opinion, somebody who maybe wins 14 to 15 games, maybe a 3.5 ERA. I think that's fine. And I would sign up for that for, 5 or 6 years of that. And then, when it's time for a big contract, let somebody else pay for it. But, a guy his size, generally, in my opinion, doesn't last deep into their 30s. So you need to get as much as you can out of him for the next 4 or 5 years. Let him pitch. Don't let him spend those bullets at AAA. Get everything that you can out of him now. And then hopefully, he maxes out quickly. I think he really could be a number 3. I don't see him as a Pedro. I know they're from the same town. I know the same size, but the way the ball came out of Pedro's hand, I mean, you watched it. It was different.
Pedro was 125-pound Bob Gibson.
Yeah, very much.
He's special.
Yep, that night that he struck out 17 Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Usually I'm pissed off watching somebody dominate the Yankees, but that night I was like, we're watching a Hall of Fame performance tonight. This is the best it's been done in my lifetime. And I still remember that night, I knew around the 4th or 5th inning, I think Chili Davis hit a home run to break up a no-hitter maybe. Yeah. But I remember thinking, like, if Boston puts some runs on the board, this game's over, because Pedro is absolutely filthy. And he had that look in his eye like, you're not going to touch me tonight. And I see that Deivi Garcia has a little bit of that killer instinct. He's got that kind of mentality, and that's why people compare him to Pedro, but he just doesn't have the stuff. He just does not have that 100-mile-an-hour consistent fastball. Go back and watch the 1999 All-Star game when he buzzed his way through Sosa, McGuire, and I think Larry Walker, maybe a few other guys. That was really the peak of Pedro's career. But compare that to Deivi Garcia. Aside from their stature, it's no comparison.
No. I mean, hey, Pedro is, again, he's dominant. He's one of the top, probably the top 5 right-handed pitchers in probably in all of history. Definitely in my lifetime, definitely the best. And it was fun. As much as I hated him on the Red Sox, and it is what you had to tip your cap to him every time he pitched, pretty much for the most part. And a lot of folks don't remember, he was teammates with Randy Johnson earlier in their careers with the Expos.
Yeah, that was a good team.
With them being teammates moving forward, it would have been crazy.
And that Expos team had a lot of good players coming up. They had the Larry Walkers, they had Moises Alou, they had John Wetland until he came to the Yankees. They were notorious for developing players, and then it just kind of, fizzled with the fans, and they had to move the franchise. If you are new to the channel, here's a rundown of what you'll find here this season. Pre-game shows and post-game reactions from most Yankees games. I also do a podcast, 15 to 20 minutes if it's solo, 30 to 45 if I have a guest. Also prospects, rumors, and breakdowns. And don't miss the Martian Tracker, where I will post periodic updates of the Yankees' #1 prospect, Jason Dominguez, as he makes his way to the major leagues. Please like and subscribe. It helps other Yankees fans find the channel. I'll see you next time.